Every force in nature that creates life can also destroy it. Fire warms homes and cooks food, but it also burns cities to ash. Water quenches thirst and grows crops, but it drowns ships and floods valleys. The same principle applies to sexual energy. It is the most powerful creative force known to humanity. Yet most people allow it to scatter their focus, drain their willpower, and diminish their potential, instead of harnessing it to build something extraordinary. The ancient Stoics never called sexual desire evil or sinful. They understood it as a natural energy, a fundamental drive that flows through all living beings. But they also understood something crucial. This energy must serve reason, not rule it. When sexual energy is undirected, it becomes chaos. When it's channeled with wisdom and discipline, it becomes one of the greatest sources of human achievement. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor who ruled Rome while maintaining his inner peace, wrote extensively about aligning oneself with nature's order. He saw sexual desire not as something separate from virtue, but as part of the same cosmic force that grows trees, moves tides, and creates stars. The problem isn't the desire itself, it's the lack of direction. A river flowing within its banks gives life to everything it touches. A river without banks floods the land and destroys everything in its path. Your discipline is the bank that channels this powerful current toward creation rather than destruction. Chapter 1. What sexual energy really is. To truly understand sexual energy from a Stoic perspective, we must look beyond the physical act itself. Sexual energy is not merely about reproduction or pleasure. It's the raw current of creation that moves through all living things. It's the force that built civilizations, inspired great art, drove innovation, and gave humans the courage to take risks and push boundaries. This energy manifests in many forms throughout human life. It appears as the ambition that drives an entrepreneur to build something from nothing. It shows up as the creative fire that possesses an artist when they're deep in their work. It's present in the courage of a warrior facing battle, in the passion of a leader inspiring others, and in the determination of anyone pursuing mastery in their field. The ancient philosophers recognized that this energy wasn't just about the act of sex, it was about life force itself. The Greeks called it eros, not just romantic or physical love, but the creative impulse that drives all human striving. When this force is understood and respected, it becomes a wellspring of power. When it's misunderstood and misused, it becomes a source of weakness. Consider the fundamental nature of sexual energy. It's designed to create new life, to bring something into existence that didn't exist before. That same creative principle can be applied to anything. When you learn to recognize sexual energy as creative energy, you begin to see it everywhere, in the urge to build, to make, to leave your mark on the world. But here's what most people miss. This energy doesn't care what you create. It will just as easily create chaos, addiction, shame, and emptiness, as it will create art, achievement, and legacy. The energy itself is neutral. What matters is whether you direct it consciously or let it direct you unconsciously. Marcus Aurelius understood this deeply. He wrote, "Everything in harmony with you is in harmony with me, O universe. Nothing is early or late for me if it is timely for you. All is fruit for me that your seasons bring, O nature." He saw sexual desire as part of the same cosmic order that governs everything. The challenge isn't to deny this order, but to align with it consciously, to work with nature rather than being tossed around by it. Think of sexual energy as water pressure in a pipe system. When that pressure is properly contained and directed, it can power entire cities. When pipes burst or leak, that same pressure causes damage and waste. Your task as a conscious human being is to become the architect of your own system, to build strong pipes, install proper valves, and direct the flow where you want it to go. Chapter 2. The Stoic View of Pleasure and Desire. Epictetus, who rose from slavery to become one of history's greatest philosophers, had a particularly clear-eyed view of pleasure and desire. He warned his students that uncontrolled pleasure turns men into servants of their bodies. He asked them a penetrating question. Do you wish to be a slave of what can be taken from you? This question cuts to the heart of the issue. When you become dependent on pleasure, any pleasure, you've surrendered your freedom. Your mood, your focus, your sense of self-worth become tied to something external, something that can be gained or lost, given or taken away. This is the opposite of the Stoic ideal of inner freedom. But here's what's often misunderstood about Stoicism. The Stoics weren't advocating for the elimination of pleasure. They weren't promoting a grim, joyless existence of constant denial. What they promoted was temperance, one of the 4 cardinal virtues along with wisdom, courage, and justice. Temperance means moderation, balance, and self-control. The Stoic approach to pleasure can be summarized this way. Enjoy pleasure as a guest, not as a god. When pleasure visits your life, welcome it, appreciate it, and then let it go. Don't make it the center of your existence. Don't organize your life around chasing it. Don't become dependent on it for your sense of well-being. Seneca wrote extensively about the difference between pleasure and happiness. Pleasure, he noted, is fleeting and external. It comes from circumstances, from things, from experiences. Happiness, or what the Stoics called eudaimonia, comes from within. It's the deep satisfaction of living according to your values, of acting with virtue, of being the kind of person you respect. When it comes to sexual pleasure specifically, the Stoic view is nuanced. Sex itself isn't wrong or bad. It's a natural part of human life. But the craving for sex, the obsession with it, the dependence on it, these become problems. When sexual pleasure dictates your mood, consumes your thoughts, and drives your decisions, you're no longer in control. You've become a servant. The key distinction is this. You can enjoy something without being ruled by it. You can experience pleasure without becoming addicted to it. You can engage in sexual activity without letting sexual desire dominate your life. This is the balance the Stoics sought, participating fully in life while maintaining inner sovereignty. Epictetus taught that true freedom comes from wanting only what you already have control over, your choices, your character, your responses. Everything else is ultimately beyond your control. Sexual pleasure falls into this category of things you don't fully control. You might pursue it, you might achieve it, but you can't guarantee it, and you certainly can't hold on to it permanently. Therefore, the wise person, the Stoic sage, doesn't make pleasure his goal. He makes virtue his goal. And sometimes virtue includes pleasure, sometimes it doesn't. Either way, the Stoic remains centered, remains free, remains himself. This perspective transforms your relationship with sexual energy. Instead of being driven by urges you don't understand and can't control, you become conscious of the energy. You understand its nature, and you choose how to engage with it. You're no longer reactive, you're responsive. You're no longer a slave, you're a sovereign. Chapter 3. Energy, Transmutation, and Purpose. Here's where the philosophy gets intensely practical. Sexual energy and life energy are the same thing. This isn't mysticism, it's observation. The same biological and psychological forces that drive sexual desire also drive ambition, creativity, courage, and achievement. Throughout history, countless individuals have discovered this connection and learned to transmute sexual energy into other forms of power. Leonardo da Vinci, one of history's greatest creative geniuses, practiced extended periods of celibacy. He believed that creative power and sexual power drew from the same source, and he intentionally redirected that energy into his art, his inventions, and his scientific investigations. The samurai of feudal Japan trained extensively in managing sexual energy. They understood that the same vitality that drives reproduction could be channeled into heightened awareness, sharper focus, and greater presence in combat. Their martial disciplines included practices specifically designed to conserve and redirect this energy. Even in the Western philosophical tradition, the Stoics recognized this principle. Cleanthes, one of the early Stoic masters, spoke of eros, disciplined by reason, the idea that passionate energy, when guided by rational understanding, becomes an unstoppable force for achievement and growth. Modern neuroscience actually supports this ancient wisdom. Sexual arousal and creative inspiration involve similar neurochemical processes. Both activate the brain's reward centers. Both involve dopamine pathways. Both create states of heightened focus and energy. When you learn to recognize this energy for what it is, not just sexual but vital, you can begin to direct it consciously. Here's what this looks like in practice. When you feel sexual desire arising, you have a choice. You can dissipate that energy through immediate gratification, physical release, fantasy, distraction. Or you can capture that energy and redirect it towards something that creates lasting value. Redirect it into your work, that project you've been putting off, that business you want to build, that skill you want to master. Redirect it into physical training. Push yourself harder. Move your body. Build strength and endurance. Redirect it into creative expression. Write, paint, compose, make something that didn't exist before. Redirect it into service. Help someone. Contribute to your community. Make a difference in someone's life. Each time you successfully transmute sexual energy into purposeful action, something remarkable happens. You get stronger. Not just physically, but mentally and spiritually. You build the neural pathways of self-control. You strengthen your willpower. You develop what the Stoics called enkratia, self-mastery. Over time, this practice transforms you fundamentally. You stop being someone who is pushed around by urges and impulses. You become someone who has access to tremendous energy and knows how to direct it. You develop what can only be described as personal magnetism, a presence, a gravity, a quiet intensity that others can feel. This isn't about denying your nature. It's about fulfilling your nature at the highest level. Humans are capable of so much more than merely responding to biological drives. We can create art that lasts centuries. We can build institutions that outlive us. We can develop ideas that change civilization. We can forge relationships of profound depth and meaning. All of this requires energy, and sexual energy, properly understood and directed, is one of the most potent sources available. The Stoic approach is to see every arising of desire as an opportunity, not for indulgence, not for suppression, but for transformation. The heat of desire becomes the fuel for creation. The intensity of passion becomes the focus for achievement. The raw power of biological drive becomes the refined strength of conscious purpose. When you master this practice, you stop chasing pleasure and start creating meaning. You stop consuming energy and start generating it. You stop being driven by your appetites and start being driven by your vision. This is what it means to be truly powerful. Not in dominating others, but in commanding yourself. Chapter 4. The Cost of Misuse and Dissipation. Let's speak plainly about what happens when this powerful energy is squandered rather than channeled. A man who has become addicted to sexual stimulation, whether through casual encounters, fantasy, or digital content, loses his edge. He wakes up foggy, his eyes heavy, his confidence thin, his motivation scattered. This isn't moralizing, it's observation. Why does this happen? Because each indulgence isn't just a physical release, it's an expenditure of spirit, of attention, of vital force. Ancient traditions from various cultures recognized this and spoke of the loss of jing, vital essence, ojas, vigor, or what the Greeks called pneuma, life breath. Modern science confirms this in its own language. Hormonal depletion, dopamine desensitization, neural pathway reinforcement of compulsive behavior. Consider the mechanics of addiction to sexual stimulation. The brain releases a cascade of neurochemicals during arousal and climax: dopamine, oxytocin, endorphins. These create a powerful sense of pleasure and reward. But here's the trap: the brain adapts. What provided intense pleasure yesterday provides less pleasure today. So you need more intensity, more novelty, more frequency to achieve the same feeling. This is the hedonic treadmill in action. You're running faster and faster to stay in the same place. And gradually, other sources of pleasure and meaning begin to pale in comparison. Your work becomes dull. Your relationships feel flat. Your hobbies seem pointless. Why? Because you've been hijacking your brain's reward system with supernormal stimuli, and normal life can't compete. Lust operates on a particular lie. It promises fulfillment but delivers emptiness. You think, once I satisfy this desire, I'll feel complete, satisfied, at peace. But the moment after satisfaction, there's often not peace, but a kind of hollowness, sometimes even shame or regret. Why? Because the desire was never about connection or meaning. It was about escape, about filling a void that pleasure can never truly fill. From a Stoic perspective, this is suffering of your own creation. Epictetus would point out that you're disturbed not by the thing itself, but by your judgments about it. You've judged that sexual pleasure is necessary for your well-being, that you can't be happy without it, that denying yourself is intolerable. These judgments trap you. Marcus Aurelius observed, "The things you think about determine the quality of your mind. Your soul takes on the color of your thoughts." If your thoughts constantly circle around sexual fantasy, your mind becomes scattered, agitated, and weak. You lose the clarity needed for good judgment. You lose the focus needed for achievement. You lose the presence needed for genuine connection. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." The greatest waste isn't money or time, it's energy. Every moment spent in compulsive behavior, every hour lost to fantasy and distraction, every day where your mind is clouded by addiction. This is life itself being drained away. The cost shows up in multiple dimensions. Mental clarity. A mind constantly pulled toward sexual thoughts is a divided mind, incapable of sustained focus or deep work. Emotional stability. When your happiness depends on the next hit of pleasure, you're on an emotional roller coaster, swinging between anticipation, gratification, and emptiness. Physical vitality. The constant cycle of arousal and release depletes the body's energy reserves, leaving you tired, unmotivated, and lacking the vigor needed for challenges. Relational depth. When you've trained your brain to associate intimacy with immediate physical gratification, you lose the capacity for the patient, gradual unfolding of real connection. Self-respect. Perhaps most critically, when you know you can't control yourself, when you break promises to yourself repeatedly, your self-respect erodes, and without self-respect, nothing else works. The Stoic path reverses this equation entirely. Feed the will, and the body obeys. Build strength of character, and physical appetites naturally come under control. Develop clarity of purpose, and distractions lose their power. This isn't suppression, it's transformation at the root level. Chapter 5. The Practice of Transmutation. Now we arrive at the practical core. How do you actually transmute sexual energy into creative power? This isn't abstract philosophy. It's a concrete practice you can implement immediately. First, understand that energy doesn't vanish. It changes form. This is a law of physics and a law of human psychology. The vital force that rises as sexual desire doesn't disappear if you don't gratify it immediately. It remains available to be channeled elsewhere. The key is learning to redirect consciously, rather than suppress unconsciously. Here's the fundamental practice. Step 1. Recognition. When sexual desire arises, pause. Don't immediately act on it, but don't try to push it away either. Simply notice it. Ah, there's sexual energy arising. This moment of recognition creates space between stimulus and response, the space where freedom lives. Step 2. Acceptance. Accept that the energy is natural and not inherently bad. The Stoics taught amor fati, love of fate, love of what is. The energy arising in you is what is. Don't fight against nature. Work with it. Say to yourself, this is natural life force. I can use this. Step 3. Breathing. Take several deep, conscious breaths. Breathe into your belly, filling your lungs completely. Then exhale slowly, fully. This does several things. It activates your parasympathetic nervous system, calming the urgency of the impulse. It brings you into your body consciously, rather than being swept away by sensation. It creates a momentary circuit breaker in the automatic stimulus-response pattern. Step 4. Redirection. Now, consciously redirect the energy. Feel the vitality, the aliveness, the power that's moving through you, and choose where to send it. Stand up and move your body. Do push-ups, go for a run, train hard. Sit down and engage your mind. Write, create, work on that project. Reach out and connect with someone. Have a real conversation. Offer help. Contribute something meaningful. Step 5. Integration. After you've redirected the energy, take a moment to acknowledge what you've done. I felt desire arise, and I chose to channel it into something constructive. This reinforcement strengthens the neural pathway you're building. Over time, this pattern becomes automatic. Desire arises, and your system naturally channels it toward purposeful action. Each successful transmutation adds a layer of armor to your character. You're literally rewiring your brain, building new associations, strengthening the prefrontal cortex's ability to regulate the limbic system. You're becoming someone who has access to tremendous energy and knows how to wield it. Over time, something remarkable happens. You begin to radiate a different quality of presence. It's hard to put into words, but others can feel it. There's a calmness combined with intensity, a stillness that contains power, a groundedness that suggests reserves of strength. This is what monks develop through years of practice. It's what warriors cultivate through discipline. It's what true leaders naturally possess. They're not suppressing energy, they're containing it. And that containment creates pressure, intensity, magnetism. Think of it like this. An explosion releases energy in all directions randomly. Lots of sound and fury, but little lasting impact. A laser focuses energy in one direction with precision, quiet, controlled, and capable of cutting through steel. Transmutation is the process of becoming a laser instead of an explosion. The ancient Taoists had a practice called Jing conservation, preserving vital essence and circulating it internally to build health and spiritual power. The yogic traditions speak of brahmacharya, wise use of sexual energy. The Stoics spoke of enkratia, self-mastery over passions. All of these point to the same truth. The power you gain by mastering this energy is greater than any temporary pleasure you might get from dissipating it. Chapter 6. Love, Intimacy, and Conscious Connection. The Stoics spoke of oikeiosis, the natural affection and familial feeling that binds human beings together. This is different from lust, different from neediness, different from using another person as a means to your own gratification. Real intimacy is the meeting of two complete individuals who respect each other's autonomy and dignity. When sexual energy is channeled through awareness, respect, and genuine affection, it becomes something far more powerful than mere physical pleasure. It becomes connection at the deepest level. But this requires both people to show up consciously, not as consumers seeking gratification, but as complete humans offering presence. Sex without awareness is mechanical, bodies going through motions, seeking release, then separating. It dulls sensitivity over time. It reinforces disconnection even in the midst of physical closeness. It leaves both people feeling somehow emptier than before. Sex joined with conscious awareness, mutual respect, and genuine affection does the opposite. It creates resonance between two people. It builds trust. It opens vulnerabilities in ways that strengthen rather than weaken. It becomes an expression of care, not just an exchange of pleasure. A man who approaches intimacy with purpose rather than hunger creates an entirely different experience. He's not grasping, not needy, not trying to fill a void through another person. He's offering presence, attention, and genuine care. This changes everything. The Stoic approach to intimate relationships emphasizes several key principles. Virtue over pleasure. The goal isn't maximum pleasure, but maximum virtue. Treating the other person with honor, honesty, and care. Presence over performance. Being fully present in the moment matters more than techniques or outcomes. Connection over consumption. The purpose is genuine connection and mutual enrichment. not using another person as a means to your gratification. Respect for autonomy. Each person remains a sovereign individual, never losing themselves in the relationship or demanding that the other person complete them. Marcus Aurelius, despite being emperor with access to anything he wanted, remained faithful to his wife Faustina for decades. Why? Not out of fear or obligation, but because he understood that fidelity was an expression of his own character. His sexual choices reflected his values, and his values centered on integrity and virtue. When a relationship includes sexual intimacy, the Stoic framework suggests that this intimacy should express and deepen the relationship's core values: trust, mutual respect, care, and commitment. When it does, sexual energy becomes bonding energy, strengthening the connection between two people who are committed to each other's growth and well-being. Conversely, when sexual activity is disconnected from these values, when it's purely physical, transactional, or exploitative, it degrades both people involved. Not because sex is bad, but because using another person as an object violates the fundamental Stoic principle of respecting human dignity. Chapter 7. The Modern Distortion and Recovery. In our current age, sexual energy has been weaponized against you. An entire industry exists to capture your attention, hijack your reward system, and keep you in a state of constant craving. Digital technology has created supernormal stimuli that your brain wasn't designed to handle. Infinite novelty, zero consequences, complete privacy. The result is an epidemic of compulsive behavior that would shock the ancient Stoics. Men spending hours daily consuming content that rewires their brains. Women seeking validation through sexualized imagery. Relationships destroyed by infidelity that started with just looking. Young people unable to form real connections because their sexuality has been trained on fantasy. A Stoic looks at this modern landscape and sees tragedy, not temptation. He understands that what is endlessly consumed soon loses meaning. He recognizes that industries profiting from your weakness have no interest in your strength. He sees clearly that the path being offered leads to emptiness, not fulfillment. So he steps back. He guards his attention like a fortress. He treats his sexual energy with the reverence it deserves, as creative power, not entertainment. He preserves mystery, maintains boundaries, and refuses to let his mind be colonized by commercial interests. Recovery from modern distortion requires several deliberate choices. Digital discipline, removing access to stimulating content, using technology intentionally rather than compulsively. Recognizing that just looking isn't harmless. It's training your brain in patterns that diminish you. Attention protection, guarding what you allow into your mind, understanding that images and ideas shape your desires and perceptions. Real-world engagement, replacing digital consumption with actual human connection, physical activity, creative work, and meaningful contribution. Community accountability, finding others committed to the same path, creating structures of support and honest conversation about struggles and victories. The path back to health isn't quick or easy, but it's possible. Thousands of men have broken free from compulsive patterns and rediscovered their natural vitality, clarity, and connection. The brain's neuroplasticity means that what has been learned can be unlearned. What has been wired can be rewired. The transformed man and the path forward. When a man gains genuine mastery over his sexual energy, everything changes. His presence shifts. His eyes become steady and clear, carrying depth rather than hunger. His words slow down, carrying weight and consideration. His decisions sharpen, arising from clarity rather than confusion. His confidence deepens, rooted not in bravado, but in self-knowledge and self-respect. People feel something different in his presence, a quiet gravity, a calm magnetism, a sense of contained power. This isn't mysticism or manipulation. It's the natural result of energy under conscious command. He's no longer driven by impulses he doesn't understand. He's driven by intentions he's chosen. His strength isn't loud or aggressive. It's the strength of contained fire, of disciplined force, of conscious power. Such a man creates more than he consumes. He builds businesses, raises families, develops skills, contributes to his community, leaves things better than he found them. He doesn't look for excitement outside himself because he's learned to generate it from within. He doesn't need constant stimulation because he's discovered the deep satisfaction of purposeful action. The Stoic path isn't about suppression or denial. It's about transformation and elevation. It's about taking the raw material of natural desire and forging it into conscious purpose. It's about recognizing that you have within you a tremendous source of creative energy and learning to be a wise steward of that gift. Remember, sexual energy is the divine spark of creation. It built humanity itself. But power without wisdom always destroys its holder. The Stoic doesn't extinguish the fire. He learns to aim it, to channel it, to use it in service of something greater than momentary pleasure. Master your desires, and that same energy will help you master your life. Because in the end, the greatest satisfaction isn't found in losing yourself to pleasure, but in finding the self that nothing can control. The sovereign self, the conscious self, the self that chooses its path and walks it with dignity. This is the power of sexual energy properly understood, not as weakness to overcome or evil to resist, but as creative force to harness, vital energy to channel, and divine power to steward with wisdom and care. Be disciplined. Be deliberate. Be the man who commands his fire instead of being consumed by it.